All right, there we go. All right. So again, we've been looking at the macromolecules. We've talked about carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids, and we are looking, and we have our chart, our graphic organizer that has all our information on it. And you want to just go ahead and share. You want to make sure that you're looking at that. After today, we are finished with our macromolecules, which means Monday we're going to review, and before you leave class today, and we're going to test the unit next week, okay, on macromolecules. So today, we are here, nucleic acids. And like nucleic acids are a little bit different. The others are more like nutrients, things that we get from our food. So we had a list on our graphic organizer. We had a list of foods that we would get these macromolecules from. The last video we saw, they talked about some of these we don't manufacture in our body. So if we don't take these amino acids and building block molecules in the foods we eat, we're not going to get them. And this is where we end up with deficiencies, because we're not providing our bodies with the building blocks that they need to make the tissues or make the organelles or make the enzymes that they need to perform the life functions. So this is why having a balanced diet is important, because not everything are we able to manufacture in our bodies. Some of the things have to be taken in the foods we eat. One of the things he mentioned was the omega uh, oils, the fats from omega-3 oils. You need to take, so you need to eat fish. You need to figure out what form of omega that you can tolerate. The supplements are good, but sometimes the supplements are not pure. They're manufactured by companies that are just trying to make money. And so you want to make sure that you are getting good stuff from the foods that you eat. And and your body also is very, very smart. It recognizes synthetic things and it doesn't like synthetic things. It doesn't know what to do with synthetic things, so it stores it, puts it to the side. So you're saying, I'm eating all these things, I'm taking all my vitamins, but if they are synthetic made, if they're artificially made, then the body says, I don't know what that is. And so I'm not dealing with that. And it gets stored. And this is how we get some of our diseases as well, because you're storing things in your body that are just accumulating, and then they start breaking down your cells. So good nutrition is important. All right. I said all that to say nucleic acids are different. Nucleic acids are not nutrients. They are things that are found in the nucleus of your cell, and they are responsible for genetics. In this unit, we're just introducing what a nucleic acid is, but then we have a whole chapter on genetics and structure of DNA and how it works. So all that you're watching today is just kind of, and I'm going to point out some things that you don't have to know right now, but you will have to know later. So in this video, I don't even know why they included this here. It's short, it doesn't talk. I'm gonna play it anyway. To me, they could have did without this, but as far as our graphic organizer is concerned, we're interested in the same things. What is it? What is its purpose in our body? Why is it important? What its structure looks like? What a monomer looks like? What a polymer looks like? And what is it used for? All right, so this is almost over, and it really hasn't said anything that you need to know. Okay. What you need to
created using Powtoon.
And at the end, then they have sounds. I truly don't understand why that was there. But anyway, all right. So nucleic acid is the heading. There are two types. The two types are DNA and RNA, and we need to know the difference. Right now, again, you need to just know that there are two types of nucleic acids. When we do genetics, you will have to know all of this in intricate detail. So we need to know the purpose. It is to carry out the genetic code. What they mean by that is DNA acts like the manager or the foreman of a factory. So it is found in the cell, it's found in the nucleus of the cell, and it has the blueprints on how to build everything. And so it sends those blueprints. So it works hand in hand with RNA. DNA stays in the nucleus, it never leaves its office, but the RNA copies the information that the DNA has, and then it takes it out into the cell, and the cell manufactures whatever the DNA tells it to do. Okay, so the DNA is the boss, and the RNA is the messenger or the foreman that gets everything else done. Okay. All right. Two things you do need. So, it it does have a. It's selling it as a polymer, but the monomer is a nucleotide. So the whole thing, the whole chain of the DNA is multi-nucleotides hooked together. So the whole chain as a whole is a polymer. There's not a special name for it except for DNA, but each unit on that chain has a name and it's called a nucleotide. So there is a name for the monomer. Okay. And it is made up of three things: a sugar, a phosphate, and a nitrogen base. Um, and again, there are the nitrogen bases. What makes it different? So over here we have different colors. They have color coded the nitrogen bases. So in a DNA molecule, you have adenine, thymine, cytosine, and guanine. RNA also has four, but one of them is different. DNA has thymine, uracil, sorry, RNA has uracil. They interchange. So that's how we know. That's one of the ways we know whether we're looking at DNA or RNA. So if we see thymine, that's DNA. If we see uracil, that's RNA. The other way we know that it's an RNA or DNA is DNA is double-stranded. It's what we call a spiral staircase. It has that spiral look to it. It is double-stranded, so it has two sides with the bases in between. RNA is single-stranded, okay? So that's what you need to know about that right now in order to tell the difference between DNA is double-stranded. This is referred to sometimes as a spiral staircase, or a double helix is the scientific term for it. Double helix is the shape, and RNA is single-stranded. All right. You see these different color things, those are the nitrogen bases, and they are hooked together by a hydrogen bond. Okay, which is a light bond for this, because when it comes time, and like again, we'll talk about it in detail later, for copying the information, it unzips. So it separates, the information is copied, and then it closes back up. Okay, so like I said, that we'll worry about that later. Okay, they're going to talk about structure on this one, so let's stop and look at that one.
Hi, this is Ms. Delosier, and these are your notes on nucleic acids. So DNA
Okay.
or RNA.
Here again, she's going to give you a lot of information. Most of it we're going to deal with later on when we do genetics, but it still gives you a background on what nucleic acids are.
So nucleic acids, DNA and RNA, right? We're all familiar with those. That is your hereditary material. It's your hereditary information. It's on your chromosomes. It's in your genes, whatever you want to say about it. It's your nucleic acids, right? And they're made of monomers of nucleotides. All right, so DNA is made up of four nucleotides: adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine. And then RNA is made up of A, G, C, and U. And we're going to review that again in a second. So let's look at what a nucleotide is first. So a nucleotide is made up of a sugar to start. So we have a sugar, and in DNA, our sugar is deoxyribose, which is a 5-carbon sugar. In RNA, our sugar is ribose. So let's look at this 5-carbon sugar, and then we're going to go ahead and we're going to attach it to a phosphate group. Now, because that phosphate is negatively charged, this is going to provide an overall negative charge to my DNA, which means DNA is most definitely charged, which means it is most definitely going to be hydrophilic. So it's going to like water. So I'm going to take my phosphate group, attach it to a sugar, and then it's going to attach to the working end, which is the nitrogen base. And this is
Okay, this you do need to know. So what is a nucleotide? I told you it's the monomer. You do need to know that it is made up of a sugar, a phosphate, and one of the 4 nitrogen bases, the adenine, the guanine, cytosine, thymine. Okay.
is a super generic nitrogen base. That's a made up nitrogen base. Don't think there's one that looks like that. So that's my nitrogen base. Okay? And so that, all 3 of those together make up a nucleotide. When we did these in class, I just had you make the base because we didn't have large enough kits to make the sugar and the phosphate group too. So let's go ahead and let's look at the basic structure of DNA. So DNA, you have a yellow sugar, or you're going to have a yellow phosphate group attached to a white sugar, right? So yellow, white, yellow, white, yellow, white. So basically what I have is I have this backbone going down the sides that's phosphate, sugar, phosphate, sugar, phosphate, sugar, phosphate, sugar. And then hanging off the sides, you end up getting the nitrogen bases. And the nitrogen bases, because DNA is 2-stranded, right? The nitrogen bases stick off towards each other and they form like the rungs of a ladder, and they bind together through hydrogen bonding. All of the bonds in what I've got drawn here are covalent bonds, but when I actually have like A and T next to each other, they're going to form hydrogen bonds. Okay, they're not going to actually form a covalent bond across the strands. They actually form many hydrogen bonds. So that's my DNA structure. That's a single-stranded structure, but we made it DNA. It's a single-stranded DNA. So let's talk about the 5 types of nucleotides. So my 5 nitrogen bases, there's only 5 nitrogen bases. There's adenine, which always pairs to thymine in DNA, and then guanine, which always pairs to cytosine in DNA. And then in RNA, I have uracil, okay? So adenine and guanine are what we call purines, which basically just means that they're double ring structures. So see the double ring structures below? Like, don't memorize them. That's a waste of your energy. But they're double ring structures. Adenine and guanine are double rings. Thymine and cytosine and uracil are what we call pyrimidines. And I always remember this because uracil is the shortest of the nucleotides, and it's a single ring. So single ring, but it's the long word. Pyrimidines sounds like it should be that double ring thing, and it's not. So I just remember that I'm wrong all the time, and that the shortest word, uracil, is a single ring and goes with like the long pyramid type thing. That's how I remember it. I don't know how you're going to remember it, but you need to know that.
Right now, you don't need to know that. Okay, so don't worry about the shape. And I'm not going to really stress it later on either. They just know that there are 2 types. What we're going to stress later on is who matches with who. So notice how she has the adenine with the thymine. We're going to have rules later on that makes you to understand that adenine always pairs with thymine, guanine always pairs with cytosines. They're like puzzle pieces. They fit into each other. So the other ways doesn't fit. Uracil on RNA will fit adenine, and thymine will not be present. So that will replace thymine, but it'll fit the puzzle piece on an RNA. Okay, so don't worry about the purines and pyrimidines right now.
So uracil is going to bind to adenine. So if I have an adenine in my DNA, when I make an RNA copy of that, it would go A to U. And we're going to do activities on that in class. So those are my 5 nitrogen bases. And so in DNA, I'm going to have a double strand and I'm going to have A, T, G, and C. So I'm going to put like a little yellow check mark next to all four of those. And then in RNA is single stranded, and I'm going to have A, U, G, and C. So I'm going to put a pink check mark next to A, U, G, and C. And so that's your basics on the monomers of nucleic acids. Um, and that's really all I want to talk about on DNA and RNA for these notes, because we're going to spend like an entire unit on DNA and RNA, and like how we actually make proteins out of them. I just want you to know the components of DNA and RNA and how they go together. So the backbone is all covalently bound. Across the strands is going to be hydrogen bonding. And then you do need to be familiar with the 5 bases, which ones are purines and which ones are pyrimidines. If you have any questions, come see me in class or send me an email.
All right. So again, you do not have to know about pyrimidines and purines. Um, but you do need to know that the function, one of the things she mentioned too, its function is to make proteins. It tells you, like I said, it's in charge of telling the cell how to make things. And most of your structures are protein based. So it gives you the instructions on which amino, if this is the thing we want to make, it says, I need these amino acids, and it sends that information out, and it builds that protein chain to build that object. Okay. All of your genetic material is contained in the DNA. So, and later on, we'll talk about that means how tall you are, short you are, color, eyes, nose structure, all of that is genetics. And we will talk about how DNA codes for that. But right now, you just need to know that it is a macromolecule. So take a minute. I'm going to do attendance real quick and come back. Take a minute to drag these over to the appropriate spots, and then we'll talk about that. Then we will move on to water. Let me just quickly click on that because it looks like she's not coming. I know if she could, she would. Alrighty. Um, no. Alrighty. Let's All right, so macromolecule that is involved in the genetic code. And again, you have to remember that the title of the macromolecule is nucleic acid. Okay. The monomer of a nucleic acid is a nucleotide. A type of nucleotide that is double-stranded, made up of nucleotides and 4 bases, and the master code is DNA. The single-stranded nucleic acid is going to be RNA. A nitrogen base that is only found in DNA but not in RNA is thymine. The one that is only found in RNA but not DNA is uracil. And DNA is found in the nucleus of a cell. And what's in this paragraph right here is pretty much all you need to know for nucleic acids right now. This is on your graphic organizer. So all the other stuff she was talking about, you don't need to know right now, but its main function is to make protein. So you do need to know its function. We need to know the function of all our macromolecules. So its function is to code for the genetic information and make proteins. All right, so like I said, we have a whole unit on that. The other thing that you need to look at that's in this little circle diagram, it is made up of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, but it also has nitrogen and phosphorus. I do want to go back for a second. Let's see if I can do this without showing the whole video. All right, looking at this right here, these, and then looking at how they're hooked together. We always refer to it like a ladder, and that the sugar and the phosphate make up the sides of the ladder, and the nitrogen bases make up the steps or the rungs of a ladder. Okay, and it is held together in the middle. So each of these bases are held together by a hydrogen bond. Okay, but you do need to know, as far as structure again, is if it's the sides, and the same thing even if it's single-stranded, the single-stranded backbone is made up of the sugar molecule, and that would be deoxyribose if it's DNA, and ribose if it is RNA, and then a phosphate group. So that's what's on, and they're held together by the phosphate group. In the middle of it is held together by one base being connected to another base. Alrighty. Okay, function up here. All right, so we covered all of that. Now we're going to look at water. Now water is not, and this is the overall video. The Amoeba sisters that covered all 4 molecules, but that video did not cover water. Okay, so water is not, we said everything that has carbon in it is an organic molecule. Water does not have carbon in it, but we can't do without water. Most of our body is water. Most of the cell is water. So it makes it very important. So that's how it made it to our macromolecule list. And it's not that big a molecule either, but it is important. So this is why it's here. When I was in the classroom, we did this as our first lab to go through the steps of the scientific method. And you can do this at home. One of the properties of water is that it has a tendency to the molecules stick to each other. We call it adhere to each other. And we had a contest, and the hypothesis was how many drops of water can you get? The question was how many drops of water can you get on the face of a penny? And so each person was supposed to hypothesize how many drops they thought they could get on the penny, and then the contest began around the classroom to see who could get the most drops on the face of a penny. And as we did the lab, we found out that technique has a lot to do with how many you get on this. Some people said 25, and then they were surprised that they could get 60 and 80 drops of water on this penny before. And the lab was called the drowning penny, and we call it the drowning penny because eventually you will reach a point where the water will lose its tension and burst. But for the most part, the water will just bead up on the face of the penny for a very long time until it exceeds that tension point. And so our lab had, when we did our observations, we looked at how were you holding the dropper? Were you holding it up high? Were you holding it down low? Were you holding it sideways? Were you doing little drops, big drops? Because naturally, if you're going to splash the drops on there, that's going to make the splash all over the place. So were you gently dropping the drops? So technique had a lot to do with who got the most drops on the face of a penny. So like I said, that's something you can try if you have an eyedropper and a penny and nothing else to do, just curious to see how many drops you can get on the face of a penny. That's something you can play with over the weekend. All right, but it had a lot to do with the properties of water. Okay. All right. So like I said earlier, all living things depend on water. The earth is 70% water. However, while most of the earth is water, not all of it is available to us because a lot of it is frozen in the glaciers, and a lot of it is not fresh water. We cannot drink salt water. Most of the water on the planet is salt water. So our issue is taking care of the little bit of fresh water that is available to us, not polluting it, and all those sorts of things. So that's where the problem comes in. All right. This is continue. That means I'm not where I should be. Okay, let's go back to the beginning. Okay, it would have started over here. I don't know how I ended up all the way at the end. All right, so will we run out of water? We will not run out of water because what did you learn when you were in elementary school? Why aren't we going to run out of water? I know you learned this in elementary school and middle school. What did you learn? Somebody type it in the chat. Why are we not going to run out of water? What do you know about water? There's the water cycle. Thank you, Daniel. Yes. Yes, precipitation is part. So the water comes down, it and then it rains, and then how does it get back up there? How does it get evaporation? So we have precipitation, evaporation, and condensation. And once it condensates, it's in the cloud. And like some of y'all probably learned a little song, and my daughter still sings it: precipitation, evaporation, condensation. So yes, because there is a water cycle, we're not going to run out of water. Okay, we have times when, like I said, especially like this year, with all this heat, we have droughts and that just deals with the water that is available to us as fresh water. Okay, but the planet is not going to run out of water because of the water cycle. So we're okay there. Ways we can save water. They give you that every summer because we want to wash our cars and we want to water the lawn and we want to take long showers because it's hot and we're sweaty and all these different ways that we waste water. We want to water while we brush our teeth. So they give out all these little ways that you can cut back on the amount of water that you use and still, maintain a certain lifestyle. All right. Last one. Why can't we drink seawater? What's in seawater that's not good for us? Again, type it in the chat. What's in seawater that is bacteria? That's one thing. Yeah, that's not good, but that's not why we can't drink it. That'll make us sick. Salt. There's salt and what salt does, and again, when we do the cell and things later on, we're going to look at the fact that salt, because the cell is mostly water, salt draws the water out. So when we talk about dehydration, especially this time of year, the term dehydration is a lot. They want you to be drinking lots of water because the heat is drawing the water out of your cells. Okay, salt will do the same thing. It draws the water out of the cells. And when it doesn't have enough water, then all of those life functions that we talked about with Miss Gren don't function very well. And you start to feel tired, and people die from dehydration. So this time of year, they want you to make sure that you are well hydrated and you keep all your cells nice and plump with water. Uh, um, all right, characteristics of water. Water is, like I said, does not have carbon in it, but it does have hydrogen and oxygen. And when we like to say H2O, H2O means that there are two hydrogen atoms for every one oxygen atom. And right now this is upside down, but I always like to look at this as Mickey Mouse ears. So the oxygen is in the middle, is the Mickey Mouse face, and then the two hydrogens make up the little ears. But that is the shape of a water molecule. So in terms of monomers, this would be a monomer of water. Okay, H2O is the monomer, and then just polymer wise, we just have a large glass of water, body of water, a lot of water molecules just hanging out together. And I say hanging out together because we're going to learn later on too what it means. Well, you probably do this in chemistry, not so much in biology. Learn why, what it means to be a polar molecule, but you do need to know that it is a polar molecule. And because it is a polar molecule, that means it acts like a magnet. It has a north and south pole to it. So the top of the molecule has an electrical charge, has a negative charge, and the bottom of the molecule has a positive charge. So it looks like this. So, and if you were doing chemistry, you would have to know this model where it has a slightly electrical negative charge at the top, and each of the hydrogens are positively charged. And it's a covalent bond. And I always, again, in chemistry, you'll learn that there's different types of bonds. Um, one bond is where they hold hands. So they're very tightly joined together. Another one, they just share electrons. So I look at it like we're walking together and we always walk together, but we're not holding hands. Okay. So this one is one where they do share electrons. Okay. All right. And okay. That part. So you do need to know polarity. Earlier, I was talking about the characteristics where that allows the water to stay on the penny. So cohesion is the attraction of molecules of water being attracted to each other. So this is why we can have a glass of water because the molecules are attracted to each other. Um, adhesion is the attraction of unlike molecules, water traveling in the tube of a plant. Right, got kicked out, but he's back. All right, welcome back. All right. Yeah, I'm trying to be aware when y'all leave me and come back because I know the internet is acting weird these days. Capillary tubing. So we're going to watch a short video where they talk about how um, if somewhere along the way you learned about plants, plants have a vascular system like we have arteries and veins. Plants have things called xylem and phloem that look like little straws go and materials go up to the plant and come down to the roots. So it is able to travel along, to rise inside a tube because of cohesion. Okay. This down here, um, I'm not going to stress this so much, but we do need water to be neutral. So if you look at properties of most of the foods and things that we have, they have water in them, but some of them have hydrogen makes a big difference. How much hydrogen is in solution makes something acidic or basic. Water needs to not be so much basic, but it needs to be neutral. Okay, so that's all you need to know about water and pH. Water needs to be neutral. All right. Before we do this, I want to show you this little video on water, because this one gives you so much more information about water. That's it's all that frozen water.
So we have a riddle for you. Okay, not really a riddle. We're bad at riddles, but more like clues about our favorite molecule. It's polar, it's shaped like an outstretched V, its properties are awesome, and it makes up 3/4 of the surface of the Earth. That one always gives it away. Our favorite molecule is water, and we're not going to lecture you about how important water is and the fact that all life as we know it could not survive without it, because yeah, that's true. But we really want to talk about what makes water so unique for biology itself. What are some awesome properties of water? Now, we mentioned the shape of water and the fact that water is polar. It has one very electronegative oxygen that is always trying to keep the electrons closer to it than to the hydrogens it's bonded to. And this actually gives oxygen a slightly negative charge because of the electrons that are spending more time next to it, and it gives the hydrogens a slightly positive charge. Well, that means that other water molecules have an easy time bonding together. Why? Well, because the hydrogen of one water molecule with its slightly positive charge can bond to another water molecule's oxygen with that slightly negative charge. These bonds among the water molecules are hydrogen bonds, and these are the very bonds that allow water to have many of the properties that we're about to talk about. Have you ever looked at a really tall tree and wondered, how does the water get all the way up there? I mean, it's got to go against gravity. Gravity? Well, in our plant video, we talk about the xylem. It's vessels within certain types of plants, like trees, and these vessels transport water. But what's really neat about water is that it sticks to the xylem walls in what is known as adhesion, and this helps fight gravity. But water molecules with their hydrogen bonding, they also bond to each other in something called cohesion. It's almost a beads on a string kind of fashion. Water molecules evaporate from a leaf, and then the next water molecule in line is pulled upwards, and so on. This cohesion is really a big deal. Cohesion is also a reason that water striders, one of our favorite insect types, can skate on water. Cohesion contributes to the surface tension of water. Water actually has quite a bit of surface tension compared to many other liquids. And it's not just water striders that can walk on water. There are a lot of insects, spiders, and even larger animals like reptiles and some birds that have the ability to walk on water. So, to the Google for that. Now, with water being polar, it's also a very powerful solvent for other molecules. And that means that water can dissolve many other molecules, especially polar molecules and ionic compounds. Now, why does that matter? Well, this is really important because many of the processes that occur in organisms use water as a solvent. In our body system video, we talk about the function of kidneys, and you definitely couldn't have kidneys doing their function without water. Also, a main component for body fluids is water. I'll never forget when I was little, my father built us a pond. We had some goldfish in there, and I loved this pond. Well, in West Texas, where we're from, it can freeze in the winter. And one morning, I went outside, terrified to find that the top of the pond had frozen. And I thought our fish were goners. Only to find out that they were swimming and doing their fish activities under the ice layer. It's common for many substances to actually contract when they freeze and to become more dense. But water expands when it freezes and becomes less dense in its frozen state, resulting in floating ice, where it can actually make this insulated surface layer that makes a difference for many organisms underneath. And this is due to the hydrogen bonds. See, at freezing level, the making and breaking of hydrogen bonds, which usually happens pretty often, it's not happening very much when frozen. And so the molecules, they're set into this lattice of hydrogen bonded molecules, just far enough apart that it's less dense in ice form than it is in water form. And that's going to be very important for all of that aquatic life. Speaking of temperature, water resists changing its temperature. It has what's called a high specific heat. Specific heat, it's a measurement of heat that's needed to be absorbed or lost for 1 gram of a substance to change its temperature by 1 degree Celsius. And that's why on the first day that school is out in the summer, it may be super hot outside, but the water could still be pretty cool. It's really good that water's like this for life. It's stabilizing for aquatic environment temperatures. And it also means that water can absorb a lot of heat in the summer without reaching as high of a temperature itself, which is useful when winter comes along, because then the water can release heat as it cools in the winter. This also impacts the environment. Now, still on the topic of temperature, consider evaporation. Many animals rely on evaporation to cool them. Think of water molecules. They are moving, but those that have more heat energy, they're moving the fastest. And they're the more likely molecules to make the phase change to gas. And these molecules, as they leave, their energy, their heat, is no longer on your skin. And by the way, all of this is not just animals too. Plants use evaporative cooling to aid them in hot temperatures. Excessive high temperatures could be very dangerous for many different processes in both plants and animals. It can be damaging to the enzymes involved in those processes. So, that evaporative cooling is very important. Well, we went through a lot of features of water. Definitely something to consider next time you encounter it, which, based on how much we depend on water, will likely be soon. Well, that's it for the Amoeba Sisters, and we remind you to stay curious.
All right. So this video is in your playlist. If you wish to visit it again. Things that she mentioned about water. One, we talked about it before. Remember, all molecules, all things go through the stages of matter, solid, liquid, and gas. The unique thing about water is we have water. We're more familiar with the 3 stages. We have solid as ice, and ice is unique because most things, when they get cold, the molecules slow down and they get very close together. So if you would remember talking about matter, when there's no heat, the molecules are not moving. All molecules are moving all the time. Matter never is really still, but the ones that are moving very, very slow stay close together. And then if you were drawing a picture of water, the molecules are moving a little bit faster, so they're a little bit looser from each other. And with the gas, the molecules are moving really, really fast, and they have a tendency to just fly off all over the place. With water, the molecules don't draw closer together, they spread apart. So you notice if you put something some water in the fridge in a container, the water bottle kind of just gets real fat, or if you put a soda can in the freezer, it's going to explode because the water molecules expand when you try to freeze them. So that's a property of water that you need to be familiar with. The other thing she talked about with evaporation, again, I was talking about how the molecules the heat of your body makes the water the molecules in the water to move faster, so that when you get sweat on your skin, that's because you're generating all of that heat, or it's hot outside. But then you get cool because the heat from those water molecules evaporate. And when it leaves your skin, it takes that heat with it. So evaporation from your skin is good. One of the reasons they kind of give you an alcohol rub if you have a fever is to create that evaporation effect, where it draws the evaporation of the alcohol, which evaporates faster than water, will draw some of that heat away from you when it evaporates. What else? All right, so I want you to take a minute to click on these. So what you want to do, and we can do these together. Water is composed of which molecules? So it's H2O, so it's 2 hydrogens and 1 oxygen. So I forgot how this goes. Oh, you have to submit. You click on it, you click, and it tells you, yay, we're right. H2O or HOH, because sometimes as we went through putting those molecules together when we were creating polymers, polymers, they were removing water molecules. So we're removing a hydrogen from this one and an OH from the other one, and then they join and form water molecules, or dehydration. Dehydration synthesis, which means we put the molecule together by removing an oxygen molecule. Okay, so most of those molecules, the carbohydrates, the proteins, and the lipids, we put those chains of molecules together by removing a water molecule. So we move a hydrogen and an OH over here, and that's how we get the water that is produced. All right, next one. Water is unique because it is a polar molecule. So it has a top and a bottom, has a positive end. And again, think of polar as North Pole, South Pole, or like a magnet. The poles of a magnet are opposite. One side is positive, one side is negative. All right, the property of water that explains why it floats. Everything is compared to, does it float on water? So it is less dense. Density means, are the molecules packed tight together, or are they loosely spread out? Things that are, the reason we can float on water is, notice when you stand in the water, you sink. If you lay across the water, you have evenly distributed your body across the surface, so you appear to be less dense. Okay, so then you can float. But if you just jump in the water, you're going to sink because you are more dense than the water. All right, the property of water that explains why large bodies maintain their temperature. She explained what is specific heat. There is a formula for this, but what it really means is that it takes a long time for those molecules to reach a temperature where it changes and this applies for large bodies of water. It takes a long time for the temperature of the water to get really, really hot. Okay, if you, again, you probably learned this way back, that room temperature is about 67 degrees Fahrenheit. Water boils at 212, freezes at 32 degrees, and boils. So it takes a long time. If you're doing Celsius, it's room temperature is about 37, freezes at 0, but it it boils at 100. So it takes a long time for water to get to the point where it will evaporate. It's so hot that it will evaporate. Property of water that explains it does, and again, high heat of vaporization. So it takes a long time. Property of water, why it cannot dissolve. Okay, this is a vocabulary word that you need to know. Hydrophobic. It means that things are scared of water, so it doesn't mix with the water. They also used that term hydrophobic when it talked about lipids, that it has two different ends to a lipid molecule. There's an end that is hydrophobic. That's why the wax on a leaf, you can watch the water just kind of run off the surface of a leaf because of the hydrophobic characteristics of the leaf. Same thing with your skin. Your top of your skin is hydrophobic. All right, a feature that explains how molecules can be attracted to All right. Cohesion. I believe that's the one for this one. Cohesion explains why they're attracted to each other and just can hang out together. The feature, unlike molecules that travel up a plant tube, is capillary action. So think about the capillaries in your body, how your blood travels through your body. Whoops. Um, oh, this one is capillary. Okay. The other one was adhesion, I believe. Okay, explains why the water. I skipped one. Feature explains why water is a good solvent. It is the universal solvent, which means everything, almost everything except fats, dissolve. All liquids dissolve in water. So it is referred to as the universal solvent. Things dissolve in it. All righty. Okay, know before you go. So we talked about all these things. This is a pH scale. And this one I told you, you really didn't have to know all of this. What you do need to know is water needs to be neutral. It's not acidic and it's not basic. It needs to be neutral. Somewhere on here, it should have blood. It doesn't have blood on this one. But you don't want your blood to be acidic. I think I had it up here though. Yeah, blood also needs to be neutral right up here with water. Alrighty. But do know these other points. Okay. Alrighty. And so, like I said, we are done with that. I want to show you okay, don't worry. We're gonna do that later. That's a gizmo. What I do want to, and then I did not publish that for you all, but I didn't publish this for you all either. Okay. This one is your review sheet. So at the end, you have a macromolecule review page. So in addition to the graphic organizer that you have these documents that you can go over. So we're going to go over these next class. So you can download these and complete the answers. And we're going to test this unit probably next Wednesday. So when I see you on Tuesday, we will go over the answers to this document. So what you can do in the few minutes that are left now is you can download this and start looking at it. So look at all of the vocabulary that you need to be familiar with. And then we're going to go through making sure that you can complete the answers to these questions. All right. So this is your study guide for the test. All right, so we're going to, and what I typically do is I do for extra credit, I allow you to upload a completed document. So we will go over the answers. So and I don't give a big grade for this because we're going to go over the answers, but the fact that you actually took the time to fill it in, I do give extra credit for that. All right, because it will help you prepare for the test. All right. Any questions? Any questions? Any questions? Can everybody, you might, because I just published it, you might have to refresh your page to see that. You want a link. Okay, I can do that. Tutoring has started this week, so I am available at 1:30 in the Zoom link. I'm going to send this for everybody. Paste. Here we go. All right. I opened it as a PDF. You might want to open it as a doc. For me, if I open it as a doc, it wants you to download it. But if you open it as a doc, it's something that you can write on. Okay, PDF, you won't be able to write on it, but you can open it however you guys with your Chromebooks, you download it in a special way that makes it writable, and then you can upload it for me So I have not opened a folder for this yet, but I will on Tuesday. But again, this is something you can get started looking at, and we will go over the answers to it on Tuesday. All right. Well, if you're good, I'm good. And be safe. There's more, I think more weather is coming, so be safe. And see you next week. Have a good weekend.